A look back at the LGBTQ March on Washington from 1993, 30 years later. This is the focus group.
They're all business, except when they're not. It's the focus group with Tim Bennett and John Nash.
Welcome to the focus group. John Nash here with my good friend and co-host, Mr. Tim Bennett. You can find us here every Wednesday if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook. And the audio version of our show drops on all platforms that you might be subscribed to on Saturdays. And you could also hear, TFG Unbuttoned, our Tuesday podcast, which of course comes out on Tuesdays. And I would like to thank our partners here, Deep Discount. Get there by going to us, go to focusgroupradio.com, click on the Deep Discount logo, and start looking for your favorite movies and TV shows because they're not always streaming. In fact, that's something that people are rudely waking up to, like, where's my favorite show?
And everything.
So, Mr. Bennett, welcome to May.
Thank you, John. I have a question for you that I read today, and I don't know if I can answer. You can only pick one. I'll ask you this question. If you had the opportunity to travel to the past or to the future, which one would you pick? Now, it could be any time. It could be any time you could travel as far back as you wanted or as far forward as you wanted.
You might think I would say the future, but I'm probably wondering about the past now. The past might be interesting. Yeah.
I would have never pegged that. I would have figured you wanted to go ahead 100 years or 200 years or 500
You know what I'm
years.
dead curious of seeing? I would love to see what the Giza Plateau looked like in Egypt at the time of the pharaohs, when the pyramids were actually covered in like white limestone and they were like perfectly, I would like to have seen what that culture looked like at the height. With painted hieroglyphs, like alive, a culture like that alive.
Yeah, well, go back to when it was, go back to see how it was built, because no one seems to know how they did it, right? Isn't that still the thing?
Then we'll see the aliens, the whole
My
dad had this theory that they used to do things with sound and hollow rods. Because my dad with the tinfoil hats and trying to sharpen razor blades under pyramids, he thought that the priests of ancient Egypt had these hollow metal tubes, and they would like tap on a stone, and it would make a vibration, something would levitate, and they would just push it towards the pyramid.
Well, it's as plausible as anything else, right? I mean, how did
or it's just good old human labor, and they had a lot of slave power. It was not, that was.
So you think it was just hundreds and hundrds of people just moving these things?
Yeah, I do.
Up into place. I still, it's a marvel, right? It's an engineering marvel.
Whenever you, I would go to Egypt. By the way, what would you choose, past or future?
Well, I thought of the past, but then to me, I thought it was dirty and full of disease. So I thought, well, I don't know if I want to go to the past. So I would like to go ahead 200 years.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how long I'm going to stay. I'm just hoping, because this was a question posed, and they've asked people, and it was interesting. So I answered, and the answers. Do you want to take a guess of where people fell?
I'm guessing most fell into the past.
No, it was 50-50.
It was truly 50-50. Okay.
Yeah, it was 48, 52. It was it goes back
close.
And forth.
Yeah, 50-50.
But I think there's I certainly, and I said you can only pick one, but I thought there'd be things I'd like to do on both ends, which I'm sure you would as well.
Oh my God! Here's another one. I would not mind being in Lakehurst, New Jersey, the day the Hindenburg blew up.
John,
I when I was a kid, I was obsessed with
humanity.
No, the humanity. I would loved light of the air travel.
You want to see that crash?
Well, the whole idea of the Hindenburg fascinated me. Like, what a beautiful way to travel, this big thing. You could float above the sky.
Well, how come we don't do it? Because I've seen things
Hydrogen
on Popular Mechanics.
Well, it's not that efficient. And, the dirigibles were kind of hard to control, very weather dependent, not like a jet plane. So it was technology that just didn't really fit, but it was elegant, So I would see ancient Egypt. I wouldn't mind seeing what the Parthenon and the Acropolis looked like when ancient Greece was at its height. How about ancient Rome, right? Now, here's the caveat. Your disease and stuff, I think about this. You're right. Like, what if I have a cavity? What if I go to the past and have a cavity?
Well, no one's wearing deodorant. No one's brushing their teeth. Everybody stunk.
You would want to be pulled back. You'd want to go for a visit and then come back, right?
Yeah, you just want to see what's happening. No, so you have very, very distinct points of time. So I appreciate that. I don't know. I find it. I'm curious as to think of because I've thought about that with ancestry and all that stuff when you look at your background and where relatives may have come from. But I often wonder what it will be like 100 years from now here. We won't be alive, certainly. Our nieces and nephews, or at least our kids, will be.
Well, later in the show on Shop Talk, we're going to be talking about taking a look back at 1993 with the March on Washington. So here, we're going to go back in time 30 years. But guess what? When we have that discussion, we're going to see that 30 years, some stuff changed, but a lot hasn't.
Right, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back.
2 steps back, yeah.
Well, okay. Well, that's funny. I would have pegged you as a future guy, but okay. Blade Runner.
I would normally say, yeah, I'd love to hop into the future, but imagine you arrive in the future and the eastern seaboard is submerged underwater because of global warming. There's all these like battles going on, people fighting for drinking water or arable land to actually grow crops on, or everybody's fighting to live on a certain part of the planet that's a little cooler than the rest because you know what I'm getting at. Like, I think when I was a kid, I never would have thought this way.
You're dystopian, John.
But as we barrel into the future, man, here's an example of something I'm on our co-op board, and there's New York State, New York City has this thing about net zero by 2050. When you look at what's required to do that for everybody to electrify, let's say, but you know what they don't tell you? How are we going to build? Where are the electric plants being built to? What are they burning exactly? I mean, so it's like EVs. We're going to have an EV future, but where do you charge your car? There's no infrastructure for it.
Well, not only that, I've posed this question to a few friends because it's starting to happen now. You're EV, so you don't have oil, you're not changing spark plugs, you're not doing all that. But it's like a battery on your phone or your iPad or anything. It has a diminishing return. So eventually, it's not going to charge. And these batteries are $5,000 to $20,000 to replace, more on the 20,000 plus range. So you might have a great car after 3 years still, and you didn't spend maintenance or gasoline, but are you going to dump $20,000 into a new battery?
Because no way did maintenance cost $20K, right?
Or not at one hit. So what do you do?
No.
I guess you lease the car and then just have it be somebody else's problem, I guess. I don't know. But in those batteries, you can't just talk about toxic waste. I mean, you really can't just dispose of them. So it's awful both ways. As Big
I think that
Little Edie would say.
Was it Miles O'Brien or there's a reporter recently who was given a Ford, I think it was the Ford F-150 electric truck.
Yeah.
And he determined to go from, I think it was the D.C. or Philly area to Bangor, Maine or something like that. The trip took 4 times as long as it would in a normal gas-powered car. He had all kind of problems. Like he would go on an app to look for a charging station, and he'd pull up to the charging station, and it would say not in service or coming, May.
We don't take credit cards.
Imagine having
he
literally had like 5 or 10 miles left. He would go to a dealership and beg to use a charger or something. So,
well, what would have happened to you? You were stuck on the turnpike for 4 hours last week.
Over the flooding. Yeah, flooding.
Right. So what would have happened to say you had your charge and you had to sit there because it was cold. You couldn't have sat without it charging or without it running. You would have watched
the thing go down and down.
So what would you have done? What happens in those sort of things when there's a
eventually the
traffic jam?
car would just die and you'd have to literally wait to be picked up by AAA.
So who's coming to charge you up?
Yeah, there's a great question, right? And it's like this net zero thing for 2050. Like all our buildings here in the city have to have retrofitted things done, and you have to have electric steam heat, electric heat, hot water. And you look at all this, and you're like, but wait a minute, where's the power plant? Where are the lines that are taking the power in? And it's all just assumed that that's going to happen simultaneously.
Right.
So I was at this meeting the other day, and I just said, we're screwed. We're screwed. Because no one wants to really sit down and talk about this and really say, we need to do this, this, and this now. And it's going to involve sacrifice, or it's going to involve trade off here, trade off there. People don't do that. You know that.
No. And the interesting was, I think when we did a story last year about, with all the EV and the change with solar and all this, about how much oil it saved. And it was a day's worth.
A day. A day of cars driving in the United States, right?
Was all it saved up until now, right? So you think...
Yeah. We could go down that road But instead, let's have more fun on the show. So if you're new to the show, we do what we just did. We have a little banter catch-up session. Then we have a Caught Our Eye segment where Tim and I bring things to your attention, to each other's attention. We rarely pick the same thing. Take a quick break. We have a business birthday, the only show in the universe that does business birthdays now for 15 years running. And our shop talk today is we're going to be looking back at the 1993 LGBTQ plus March on Washington. Although, Tim, back then, it was just called the LG, I think it was just the Gay and Lesbian March, right?
Yep. Yeah. Gay and Lesbian March.
See
on
how
DC.
things change? All right, without further ado, Mr. Bennett, what caught your eye?
What caught your eye? Here's what Tim and John found.
So, of course, unless you've been sleeping in the news, there's been all kinds of issues around Tennessee, particularly with the banning of drag shows or all the other anti-LGBTQ legislation happening in Tennessee and some of our more enlightened red states. But this headline...
Dig.
This headline I saw, which I thought was interesting, it said, Pride on display in Tennessee's more than 100 Kroger stores. So Kroger is a grocery store chain based in Cincinnati, Ohio. So I'll read the first paragraph. It says, as Tennessee lawmakers go nuclear attacking LGBTQ rights, attempting to mute drag queens and their shows, preventing trans youth from getting supportive care, barring LGBTQ school groups, banning of books with LGBTQ themes, and so forth and so on, a small but powerful pushback gesture seems to be popping up around the state, with rainbow stickers on business doors, bumper stickers on cars, and Love Wins posters in yards. But perhaps the most visible and daring show of support in Tennessee is from Kroger, the grocery store chain, which has more than 115 locations in 56 cities throughout the state. So they've decided that they've got this kiosk of Pride merchandise that they're selling in all the stores. It's T-shirts, mugs, stickers, pens, pads, all this rainbow Pride merch that they're selling in the grocery store. And they started talking to different people as they were coming in, this reporter, and talking to people about what they thought about the display. And interestingly, some of the staff people in the store, the younger folks, think it was great. One kid, he was 17-year-old grocery worker. He said, it's surprising to me the T-shirts are $18. He said, some people walk away, but I notice a lot of kids my age are buying them anyway in order to show their pride and be supportive. The store manager who asked for anonymity said, I don't know if these are in all the stores yet in Tennessee, but we have plenty of customers who are gay and lesbian. I see them here, and I want them to be happy and feel welcome. He added, things are hard enough here for them, so it's a little reminder that there's love there. And then they said he looks away and kind of whispers to the reporter, I'm Christian, you know. And he said, looking away briefly, but I know God welcomes everybody. And
Tim, that's great.
yeah, so then he said the newscaster came in and somebody also asked the store manager, have you had pushback from people by selling this Pride merchandise? And what do you think's happening with the Tennessee legislature? And this, again, manager of the store says, I watch the news, usually with my jaw on the floor. He said, they've lost their minds and they don't represent this state anymore. So they're talking about pushback. There was one woman there, though, who said that she was not homophobic, but she had 3 children who didn't need to see this stuff, and she didn't want to have to explain it to them, and it shouldn't be allowed to be bought in the store. This all took place in the background of her standing in front of a display of Magnum condoms and lube options, which was even more hilarious. You know the news had to set her up there. Well, stand right here. Tell us how you feel. Mm-hmm. I don't want this. I don't want my kids to see this. I don't want to have to explain it. And there's this huge display of condoms and lube behind her. You can't make that up.
No.
So someone else said, I'm not bothered by it. I don't understand this was an older gentleman in the store that was shopping, says, I'm not bothered by the Pride display. I don't understand homo life, but they probably don't understand my redneck life either. He laughed. He said, we ain't hurting nobody. Move on. And so they went on that some other woman said, well, this is not a holiday. You shouldn't have this. You're grooming people, all the usual tropes. And they're trying to get Kroger to remove the displays, but they said Kroger will not remove them. And it's very unlikely. And they did say that Kroger said they learned their lesson a few years ago. There was a big protest by the religious right to remove they had an LGBT-themed newspaper that they were selling in the stores in Tennessee. And somebody complained and said that you're not allowed to promote political, religious, or specific agendas in any publications offered for sale in the store. So they got rid of all the, the gay newspapers or whatever they were having. So some guy in New York City who was from Nashville found out about this and said, wait a minute, you've got all kinds of newspapers that have opinion and political, bent to it. This is discrimination. So they went back and forth. He ended up calling the New York City Comptroller's office and said, you need to tell Kroger that you're going to pull your $90 million stake out of your retirement and union fund if they don't put this newspaper back. And so New York City did. They called the Kroger office in Cincinnati and said, we can't support you anymore. We'll be taking our $90 million away from the teachers union. And they said the next day the Kroger executives jumped on a plane, flew from Cincinnati to Nashville and apologized to the publisher of Out and About, and the newspaper was available back at the Kroger stores. So I thought that was interesting. Talk about the power of that. I thought that was shocked all the way back to New York City, right? Somebody saying, we're not going to support discriminatory groups. And Kroger was right on it, did the right thing. They said Kroger has, unlike some other companies within Tennessee, they've actually taken a stand. And they said they know it's going to be long. A lot of other people talked about how long it's going to take. They said eventually a lot of these old people, I won't use the foul language, but they said a lot of this, which is happening, is people that are just old, and when they die off, things hopefully will change for Tennessee. We're not as bad as everybody portrays us.
I think there's so many surprising things about this caught your eye and the Kroger story. The reactions of the store manager, who says quietly, I'm Christian, but I know that God Christian. Loves everybody,
yeah.
Which is the message, actually. It's not like he's making that up. That's, it's about loving your neighbor, helping out, the whole bit. And then there's that whole stupid thing about Leviticus, who actually never met Jesus and Jesus was long dead when he wrote that whole thing about don't sleep with this guy, don't plant that, don't do this. And then, of course, just the old guy. I don't understand them, but they probably don't get me. So
they don't understand rednecks, I bet. Yeah, because I don't understand them. They don't understand rednecks,
There's just something so, pleasantly
the New England,
charming.
don't tread on me, right?
Don't tread on me.
Do your thing, right. You think it's so, do your thing. And I love the woman. I don't want to have to explain this to my kids. And she's standing
in front of
with
the
big
condom.
Trojan condom display and lube. That'd have been you and I. Oh, stand right here. We'll get you on camera.
Lighting's really good here. Yeah.
I don't want to have to explain this.
Oh my God. Good one. Very good one. And uplifting too. I'll say that. I think there's an upbeat tone to the whole story, right?
I was, and I picked it because I used to, in college, we would go to Tennessee quite a bit for rowing. And I always loved the state. I thought it was a great place, beautiful state. But then this whole thing with the anti-LGBTQ put a bad taste in my mouth. And I will say I think you're right, uplifted. It was the best thing, or hopeful, that when I read the story,
further proof that the politicians don't necessarily represent
know what's
the people
going
at all.
on. Right.
Yeah.
So
mine couldn't be any different, but it involves a young man who's been asked by a court to stop donating his sperm.
Ooh.
And that's because the court has fears of incest. And here's why. The Dutchman who fathered 500 children around the world has been ordered to stop donating sperm amid fears of incest. A Dutch court ordered this past Friday a man to stop doing this, to stop donating sperm, because now that the numbers have gotten so high that he's donated, that he's fathered potentially 500 to 600 kids, stuff could happen. The 40-year-old
him?
Dutch,
If you're watching here, is that the guy?
That's the guy, yeah. They didn't show him in the original article, and then they showed him in a bunch of different articles. Huh. He's not bad looking, huh?
Handsome guy.
Yeah. The 41-year-old Dutchman was forbidden to donate more semen to clinics, the court ruling said. He could be fined 100,000 euros, about 110,000 US, per infraction. The court also ordered him to write to clinics abroad, asking them to destroy any of his semen they have in stock, except doses reserved for parents who already had children by him. Okay, so they could have the same father. The decision came after a civil case started by a foundation representing the interests of donor children and Dutch parents who had used the man as a donor. They argued that the man's continued donations violated the right to a private life of his donor children, whose ability to form romantic relationships are hampered by fears of accidental incest and inbreeding. This is like, I would never have thought of this one.
No.
The man's mass donations first came to light in 2017, and he was banned from donating to Dutch fertility clinics, where he had already fathered over 100 children. However, he continued to donate abroad, including to the Danish sperm bank Cryos, which operates internationally. The man has continued to offer himself as a donor on sites matching prospective parents with sperm donors, sometimes using a different name, according to the paper that reported this. So I did a little spelunking here, and I decided I wanted to figure out how much money can you make donating sperm, right?
I just did the same thing, yeah.
Okay, so I went to the European Sperm Bank, and it's very uplifting. Make a difference to women and couples all over the world. You scroll down, and then it's like, okay, then there's a couple hugging some young man. Maybe he was their sperm donor. Then it scroll down, what our donors say. And then I get to this. Have you tried our virtual reality headsets? We want you to have a good experience. So you are welcome to try our VR headsets to use in the donor room, where there's a wide variety of films available. So to not belabor the point, you can make upwards of 650 euro, which probably, or 560 euro, my apologies, which is probably about $500 or something, over a month period. And what it says here is we expect you to donate at least 4 times per month. And then it says, am I compensated for my time? You get $40 for every approved donation, 30 right away, and 10 after the donation has been screened for STDs and approved. So every time you go in, you get like 40 euro plus whatever. Is that what you were finding when you were doing some R&D?
Yeah, so in the U.S., they said for 6 months, it's about $4,000, which is about the same amount. I had friends that did it out of college, and I thought, well, why not? You might as well get paid for it. So, but you get checked. They had to at the time. I still remember the place was right near Pennsylvania Hospital. The guys that went in, you had to get a catheter inside your...
Ugh.
Yeah. And the one guy's like, oh, you get used to it. And I said, oh, I don't think so. But I thought, maybe to pay rent. But but he would do it, yeah. And they would get, I think then they were only getting $100 a month or something. But now, yeah, it says you get about $4,000 after 6 months. So if you did it for a year, you get $8,000. I don't know. I don't know if they still do they used to check them. That's how they would check your, I don't know what they were checking for disease, I guess, or STDs. They would do a catheter, which... Yeah, that was a non-starter for me.
The European clinic does. You have to be screened, and maybe they take the donation, then they screen it. But you do have to have a good health background. So, yeah, that one just from Kroger's and that uplifting pride display to the Dutchman who said after 500 or 600 kids, you might want to stop donating sperm.
So my guess is they did, he was, as we said, he was a handsome-looking guy, kind of a Brad Pittish-looking guy. So maybe they were concerned. So I guess you would go through a book, and that's how you pick out a donor? Is that what you do? I guess there's like a catalog or a book you go through, and I like this.
You do look at and there are traits. The person might be a musician, or they might be a scholar,
athlete, whatever. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, I think that's pretty good. Did you ever consider doing it?
Never crossed my mind.
No.
Never crossed my mind. And that would be something interesting, Tim. Imagine if they screen you, and then you're going through the book, and it's like, here's this guy. He's 6'1". He's this. He's this. He's this. And then it says, and he's gay. Like a prospective parent might think, or maybe they don't say that at all. Does it matter?
I don't know. I didn't think about that. I'm guessing they probably would. Or if you were a lesbian couple, maybe you wouldn't care.
No, you might not. Yeah, and you might ask a friend,
want
actually.
A gay guy.
Yeah.
Gosh. Well, on that happy note. So, so we're going to. Are we taking a quick break, John? We're going to take a quick break.
Yes, we're taking a quick break. Yeah.
And then we're going to come back with our business birthday, and then a shop talk John had teased early about discussing a little bit about the 1993 March on Washington, which was 35 years? No,
30 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
You're listening to The Focus Group with Tim and John. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com. Now back to the focus group with Tim and John. Available pretty much everywhere.
Welcome back to the Focus Group. John Nash with Tim Bennett. FocusGroupRadio.com is everything you need to know about us in one convenient location, including access to all our media, and that would also include TFG Unbuttoned, our Tuesday podcast, which we would love you to listen to. And if you're already following, I think we have to say following, not subscribing. If you're already following on one of the many platforms, you're probably getting in your feed already. So now we are going to have something that only our show does in the universe. I mean, possibly somewhere else they might do something resembling a business birthday. We have no idea, but we can safely say we're the only ones doing it. So, business birthday.
Everyone does celebrity birthday greetings, but the Focus Group is the only show in the universe that celebrates business birthdays.
So this business birthday today, I guess, could also be a celebrity. Probably.
Oh,
and
yes, most certainly.
We did cover him a number of years ago. After 15 years, of course, the dates start to change. We do pick new people, but this one, for today's date, May 3rd, there wasn't anybody better. So Ron Popeil was born.
Poor Ron. There wasn't anyone better.
There wasn't anybody better than Ron Popeil.
But he's great, right?
Oh, he's great. Born May 3rd, 1935. He died in July of 2021 at 86 years old. An American inventor and marketing personality and founder of the direct response company, Ronco. He made what are known to be the first infomercials, and particularly for Showtime rotisserie, if you remember, set it and forget it.
The audience used to scream at him, right?
Oh, yeah.
Set it and forget it.
He popularized a number of phrases starting way back in the 1950s. But wait, there's more. He was born to a Jewish...
Was that really his?
Yeah.
Okay.
He was born to a Jewish family in Manhattan, and his parents had a volatile relationship, but his dad was an inventor and used to tinker a lot. So his parents divorced, and he and his brother were sent to Florida to go live with his grandparents. And so his grandfather was also an inventor and would tinker around with things. And they had a company. His grandfather and his dad had a company called Popeil Brothers. And it was a manufacturing facility based out of Chicago, although they lived in Florida. A lot of the manufacturing happened out in Chicago. So at 17, he went to go work for his dad. He started college but didn't like it, and then went to learn the business from his dad, who had come up with the first kitchen gadgets that we know that ended up being Ronco products, the Chop-O-Matic and the Veg-O-Matic.
The Veg-O-Matic. Gotta love it.
Right. At the time, they sold for $3.98, sold over 2 million units. So at 17 years old, Popeil, he had amassed enough money, he would go out to state fairs and flea markets and trade shows and sell this Veg-O-Matic and Chop-O-Matic with these live demonstrations. And he made enough money that he was able to open up and stay put at a Woolworth store in Chicago. He set up there and would do the hawking of his gadgets. He did it 6 days a week, 12 hours a day. They said he became such an attraction at Woolworth that hundreds of people would spend their lunch hours there watching him give the pitch for any one of these crazy gadgets that came along. And they said, and then when state fair season would happen, usually in the fall, he would take off and hit the road, and he became a major attraction at a lot of state fairs. They said that one of the issues he had, they used to also have salespeople go door to door, and they said one of the problems with the Chop-O-Matic was that they had a problem because you couldn't efficiently, because of how much it would chop up vegetables and how many different vegetables it could chop up, salesmen weren't allowed to carry these things door to door because of all the vegetables you would have to have with you because it chopped them so quick and so efficiently. So that's when they came up with the idea of doing broadcasting in infomercials. So they would tape these. The first ones were done in the 50s in black and white, but it was static, and then they bought airtime and what came to be known as the infomercial. Later on in life, he began competing with his dad. His dad still had products, but then Ron went off on his own, would bring in competitors' products. And so some of the products, I'll just read the list through the 70s and 80s, you'll probably know. So the Chop-O-Matic, of course, Mr. Microphone, which was the first karaoke machine, the Pocket Fisherman.
I remember the Pocket Fisherman.
The button ear, remember they'd stick that needle in and pull it out. The smokeless ashtray. I remember they had those in the office in the 80s. for people that smoked. The electric food dehydrator. Remember that? You could do all kinds of, yeah. The inside the egg scrambler. The GLH9, which was a hair formula, spray hair in a can. My dad got that. It was hilarious. My mom bought it from my dad. It was got all over the pillows and everything.
Isn't it just spray paint?
It's spray paint and put it under my. But it came out like silly string.
Yeah.
And my mom tried to match because my dad was balding a little bit in the back, and my mother saw this thing saw it on the infomercial. So she buys a can of this, all dripping. They looked like Rudy Giuliani, all dripping down the face, and wasn't going to work. So that experiment went south. The rhinestone stud setter, later called the bedazzler. Remember the bedazzler?
Oh, my God.
The cap snaffler, the automatic pasta maker, again, the food dehydrator, 6-star knives, and one of his all-time classics, the Showtime rotisserie. That sold over 8 million units.
Jeez.
So at its height, these gadgets were bringing in, grossing over billions, a couple of $1 billion a year. And, of course, he saturated the media with television. We all remember the commercials. So he won a number of awards, of course, all kinds of awards and TV marketing awards. The one thing I thought was interesting, he was a member of the board of directors for the Mirage Hotels with Steve Wynn for over 22 years.
Really?
Right. He was also a director at the MGM Hotels for 7 years under Kirk Kerkorian. So I thought that was interesting that he was on the boards of those companies. In 2005, he sold the company, Ronco, to a holding company out of Denver for $55 million. I would have thought it was worth more than that.
55 is still a number.
Still
besides the
good.
fact that he's getting salary from the boards he sits on.
And he made billions,
Yeah.
on selling things. But and he had plans to continue serving as spokesperson and inventor. Because really, I think in this case, it's like you used to say with agencies, when you would leave an agency, if the creative walks out the door or the face of the business walks out the door, what are you buying, right?
Exactly. What are you buying?
So if you buy his company without him as the pitchman or him as the inventor to sell this stuff, what are you really buying unless you're still selling Mr. Microphones and so forth? He was married a number of times. He died, as I said, in 2021 at the age of 86 at the Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. And they said the cause of death was a brain hemorrhage. He had gone in for a medical emergency, and a couple of days later he had died of what they said was a brain hemorrhage. So happy birthday, Ron Popeil.
What I actually always, this is a good business birthday because of so many cool things. My favorite part of all of this was the invention of the infomercial, because you can't carry enough vegetables door to door to effectively demonstrate the product.
Right.
So, but you could do it on TV.
Right. And you think about this with so many of these things, right? They find these solutions. They find a way to say, most people would say, you can't do it because you can't carry, and then you'd stop there. But he found a way, and people probably thought he was crazy. What? You're going to make a commercial? You're going to film this, you chopping this stuff and put it on TV? Are you crazy? So, yeah.
And then, of course, the rotisserie, set it and forget it. Yeah.
He was a showman. I mean, I would watch those things. I remember all through college because it was crazy. And you knew half the stuff was probably junk. I mean, that pocket fisherman thing was hilarious. They'd show a big trout or a bass.
Yeah. You couldn't reel in a 2-inch catfish with that thing, but
Sunfish.
They made it seem like you go deep sea fishing and get a marlin. Yeah.
And you're going to make all your own jerky. Remember, you're going to do your jerky.
The beef jerky, the
Beef
dehydrator, right.
Yeah. So.
Oh, wow. All right, good one. Very good business birthday. All right, as we teased at the start of the show, our shop talk this week is a look back at the March on Washington, which happened about 30 years ago in 1993. And the picture I have up, if you happen to be watching on YouTube or Facebook Live, it's there's a bunch of people at the start of the march holding a banner saying 1993 March on Washington for lesbian, gay, and bi equal rights and liberation. And this came to us from Queer Tea, which had an interesting blog post about it because they actually posted a YouTube video of a news article. I think it was Cokie Roberts actually was one of the hosts of that piece. And it was like about an 8-minute look at the march, et cetera, et cetera. And they had some pictures that accompanied it. But it made me realize that it feels like it was so long ago, but the things that we were asking for back then, for example, so the organizers came up with 7 primary demands for this historic March on Washington. I just want to say that I think it was the second biggest or one of the largest protests in American history.
Right. Yeah, I think it was second.
The park department said anywhere from 800,000 to 1 million people showed up. They never thought it would be that big. But here are the 7 primary demands that they had. We demand passage of a lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender civil rights bill and an end to discrimination by state and federal governments, including the military, and repeal all sodomy laws. We demand massive increase in funding for AIDS education. We demand legislation to prevent discrimination against lesbian, gays, bisexuals, and transgender people. We demand full and equal inclusion of lesbians, gays, bisexuals, and transgender people in the education system. We demand the right to reproductive freedom and choice, to control our own bodies, and to end to sexist discrimination. We demand an end to racial and ethnic discrimination in all forms. And we demand an end to discrimination and violent oppression based on actual or perceived sexual orientation, identification, race, religion, identity, sex and gender expression, disability, age, class, HIV, or AIDS status. With that list of demands, I was reading through them, and I'm like, well, I guess we got rid of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, right? So we got the repeal in the military. We did get more money for AIDS education and funding. Surprisingly, was it George Bush II? George
W.
Judge W. I don't know if a lot of people know this or not, but his administration is responsible for a huge amount of money that was spent on AIDS eradication in the continent of Africa, right, Tim?
Yeah, no, definitely Africa. Yeah, he's credited with that, and Bill Clinton often highlights that because George Bush will not. He doesn't necessarily
talk about him.
Well, yeah, but he knows that they did it, and he's humble about it. But Bill Clinton always makes a point of saying, "This is how government should work, and this is how we can work together. This isn't a blue or red issue. This is a humanity issue."
Mm-hmm.
And and a lot of people would be surprised it came from George W. Bush. But I when you'd pick this out, I thought it was good to talk about, and I thought, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back with what's going on now. And the story we did earlier about Tennessee reminds you that, a lot of the discrimination's coming from people who either don't, I don't want to say don't understand, but maybe set in their ways. And eventually, as more people understand or know people who may identify as gay or lesbian, more people become accepting, and then you move forward, right?
I'll go a step further. George Will, famous conservative columnist who we haven't seen a lot of since the Trump years because he was drummed out of that whole circle. But when gay marriage passed the Supreme Court, he had an opinion piece and basically said, okay, for the LGBTQ community, it's time to stop pushing, take your win, and be quiet for a while. Because he feared that, or he suspected that the religious right, which is not necessarily, we put these two words together, the religious right.
Right.
That doesn't necessarily mean that you're dealing with individuals who are, like the Kroger manager from earlier in our broadcast, who's like, we put it out because God loves everyone. I think that we are still fighting. We're still, unfortunately, battling that whole thing, right? This is an easy bogeyman for politicians and people at the pulpit to bang the fist on. Imagine a pastor coming out saying, we have to all sit down and start thinking about global warming because it's going to change the planet and affect species and people. You tune everybody. It's just too big a problem.
Right.
Although one would say that World War II was a huge existential problem, and the world rallied around, the Allies versus the Axis. So here we are 30 years later. You went to the march, right?
I did not, but I have a very funny story about it. It happened, and I'm actually going to contact the 2 people I was with. So I was working at Subaru at an office in Chicago, and we were having this huge retreat in Wisconsin. So we had to, Saturday morning, had to pack up the cars, and I think we had a kayak or bikes or something, and we were going on this retreat for everybody for the sales group in our Chicago office. And so I picked up these 2 guys, Ted and Tom, both very handsome, 6'1", athletic college guy. We're going off on this retreat, and we all lived in the city of Chicago. So I said, I'll pick you guys up. We'll just take one car and head up to Wisconsin. So as we're heading out of town, Tom says, pull over. Let's get some coffee. Let's go to Starbucks. So we go in, and I pulled the Subaru right up in front of the Starbucks, and got all the stuff on the car. And they jump out, and they're in the little shorts, both of them, and the little dark hair and haircuts. And I'm waiting with the car, and they come back, and they're both quiet. And we start going, and they said, "Do we look gay?" And I said, "What?" And they said, our outfits, do we have like our shorts? Are we in wrong? Some woman asked us if we were on our way to D.C. to the march. And they're like, what march? And they're like, the gay march. And they were mortified. Both of them married men. Hilarious. And I remember this. Do we look gay? I said, I don't think so. Why? And so the woman, I guess she saw, the whole thing and all the coffees and the three guys, me out waiting and those two, and off we're going. She thought we were obviously going somewhere, and she assumed we were going to the March on Washington. But I did not go. But that is where Martina Navratilova did go and speak, and Pam and Nancy and that whole group went. Mm-hmm. And that was the genesis of the development of the Rainbow Card, which Subaru ended up sponsoring. So I was in Wisconsin that weekend.
Yeah, Bob and I went to the march. It was a beautiful weekend. It was amazing to be like we stayed near DuPont Circle. We stayed with a friend of our friend Paul's at the time. It was amazing to be surrounded by so many people who were like-minded, and there was a very great attitude and spirit in the air. And of course, there was a lot of vendors selling little trinkets and pride rings and flags.
I went to the Quilt.
Yes,
which was,
we actually that was on the mall
96?
for a while. Yeah.
Was it 96 maybe? I don't remember the exact date.
They had sections of it set up on the mall, right?
Yeah.
That's I remember walking around that and you just get very somber and quiet. Because,
it was dead quiet. I remember that was the thing about it. It was so quiet, and people going around looking at the different panels. It was.
I just remember, for me, I remember there's a real sense of optimism that by showing up and being as large a group as we were, and that maybe change could happen, blah, blah, blah. And the blah, blah, blah part is everything that happened after that, all the crap that happened in between, all the good stuff, wonderful representations on TV and film. I think Will and Grace probably did more for the movement than some other TV shows might have done. Right. But here we are in 2023, and we have multiple states across the country passing these anti-trans bills without any, well, you all see the news, you know what's going on. The books. Yeah. I don't want my child reading this. Well, if it's in a library, they don't have to take it out. But yeah, so
I'm surprised there hasn't been another call for a march on many levels. And I thought, there used to be, and I was reading about, they said there was a group of 12 who organized this, but I for some reason, I thought the HRC was behind it. Maybe they weren't. But
I think HRC was involved, yeah.
Yeah, but I often wonder, and people have lamented about the fact that there really is no one national body, nonprofit, that seems to be advocating for LGBTQ rights. There's lots of them, right? There's all kinds of organizations, but there's not one that seems to be that is coalesced to actually organize and help legislate or help get lobbying done. And
back when the march was happening, that would have been the HRC. Elizabeth Birch, I think, might have been at the helm, right?
Yeah,
and they were one singular voice that could actually lobby Congress, et cetera. I wonder if the march were held today, if it would be an interesting, Tim, it would be very interesting to actually have that idea go forward. We're going to have a march. Who's going to show up? And secondly, I'm wondering about Gen Z, because I'm reading more and more that they are just disgusted with everything they are seeing, because they grew up in an environment where they might have had a gay uncle or a lesbian aunt, or they know someone who's transgendered. They might know someone who's bi. They don't have fear around these conversations. They don't get why you would infringe on a woman's right to make a very fundamental decision. So I think a march, if they happen today, it would be like us and maybe Gen Z, right?
I wondered about it, because I thought with all of these states that are doing the bans and the anti-LGBTQ legislation, that I'm surprised that there hasn't been a call for it. And I haven't seen anything about it, nor have I seen a call for it. But then I was trying to think, have any groups done it? And I think probably the last large group was the Women's March they had when Trump was elected. It was probably the last big march. There might have been a Black Lives Matter march as well. But I wondered, I was just surprised that the community hasn't rallied around the cause to get out and be heard. But maybe somebody will do it.
I also think a march would send a very positive and big signal to our friends and allies in corporate America. Like, it's not so diffuse. There's actually a very large group of people that that you can speak to. Let's put it that way, right?
Yeah. The other interesting thing I thought, and you might have covered it and I missed it, but it was that initially they expected maybe 100,000 people.
Yeah, I did, and it was 800,000 to 1 million. The
Yeah,
Parks Department says.
Which, they were not prepared for that. So,
by the way, I just remember that the park rangers, the DC police, everybody could not have been friendlier. The police were fantastic. So even think about that in '93, right? I mean, They might not have had a love or a like for it, but they were certainly respectful, and they respected our dignity, right? So it was never had a problem.
What I love about that time, here you and I with the Mayberry, the Mayberry song would be playing if Matt was producing, was when the this was before cell phones or anything, right? So you just showed up.
Yep.
And how you found people,
machines,
how you found friends. Yeah, you'd probably have to find a payphone and call your answering machine at home to see where so-and-so was standing or whatever.
And it all worked.
Yeah, for some reason it all worked. So that's good for a good look back. You can also, in that article, John, if we should post it, or if you go to QWERTY and look at it, there's 6 hours of broadcast live from C-SPAN. They broadcasted the whole day, the whole march.
Yep.
So you can see all of the speakers. I watched RuPaul sang, Melissa Etheridge. As I said, Martina spoke, a number of other.
God bless Melissa Etheridge. I remember, was she the one who was like, just stop paying taxes? If we're not getting the same benefits as everybody else, let's not pay taxes.
Yeah, if I don't have the same benefits of everyone else, why am I
I
paying
like
taxes?
that idea still.
Great
I really
idea.
do like that idea. Yeah.
For anybody. If you're not treating me as a full citizen of the U.S., why should I pay taxes?
If you're making me pay as a full citizen, but I'm not getting full treatment, then why should I pay? Yeah.
So I think it's a great idea. So, hey, thanks for joining us here on the Focus Group. As John mentioned earlier, you can learn all about us at focusgroupradio.com. Be sure to follow along with us at your platform of choice. We're pretty much everywhere where you would find podcast or video cast content. And while you're there, check out our sponsors, and including Deep Discount, who's there in the corner. Just or on the side fold, just click and start shopping away for some great media there. We're going to see you next week with our podcast, TFG Unbuttoned, which is released on Tuesdays, and of course this show again the following Wednesday. As John says, we can't believe we're in May already, moving along. So take care and have a good week. See you.
It's The Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash. Accessible on all platforms. Subscribe, like, and rate us on your platform of choice. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com.
That was a stunning focus group.